He was back at camp. It was time to go down to the creek. As nerve-wracking as it was, he appreciated the connection to nature and nature's kind. He understood why they didn't walk in straight lines. They followed contours of the ground as his feet ached, even with shoes, with every step he took. He had to be quiet, because he wasn't the only one that liked to go to the creek. His greatest enemy lived in the grass. The dreaded chigger. But he knew someday there would be an even greater enemies in these woods. With his surrounding state, there were people that had elephants, and lions, and tigers. When things began to devolve, he was quite certain those things were let loose. He pauses to look around, knowing that he must be careful. For snakes and other dangers lurked as well. But none of those were as terrifying somehow as running out of money at retirement, or your children not being able to go to the right school, or not getting enough likes on your YouTube video. Earlier, he had come in here to gather more supplies for camp. Expanding, improving, just like nature. Constantly having to redo their dens and rebuild things. Salvaging some of what man had left behind. And realizing man had been dumping his waste into the same creek. And he understood why God was allowing things to burn in his beautiful country. The people didn't deserve it if they were going to treat it like this. We were told to have dominion over the land, not over people. Dominion meant to care for it, not destroy it. I wasn't quite brave enough to reach inside the den to see what was there. So he decided to cool himself in the stream and get back to work. He had to be aware, and more he was noticing the busy spider. And he didn't want to destroy his home. He knew how frustrating it was having to rebuild his hammock over and over as he tried to find a solution. But the spider was right in his path. And he hated spider webs in his face. He thought about all the sensory challenged people. And he worried for the world. So what if they had to be out here? What if this was the only safe place? The spider encouraged him. He knew he had to get back to work on his own home. But he couldn't help but watch just a moment longer. He wore the pants that he had made. He'd shared the talent and its necessity with others, and they'd laughed at its silly look, not understanding the importance of trying to cover their tracks. This was the time of day when cotton was hottest. Which would be good time in the winter for being in camp. But in the summer, it's a good time to be in the woods. He sat back and enjoyed it as the evening came in. Though the mosquitoes got a little thicker, the breeze got a little cooler. He had his Zeriba charger charging his electric fence. He hoped that would provide another level of security to his camp. He knew he didn't have anything to prove by going and making camp in the woods. But he would build his camp here. He grabbed the 7 poles that he would need to build his wiki up. And within the circle he was creating, he would have his future home. He wanted the pack of stones that lay in the thick grass. Once a burn pit, it would make a great foundation for his new home. As he went on his evening stroll, decided to grab a little food as he walked. The forest was an abundant place. There were many edible plants all around him. Just as the forest had always been. Just like the Fertile Crescent, all the way to the Midwest of Illinois. And like those places, mankind has overfarmed it, turning it into almost a wasteland. These mountains, this rocky soil, protects God's abundant natural place. Allows for food forests and return to the old ways with just enough technology to count as the future. For he was a cyborg, and they had to have just a little tech. His connection through time and space to all of mankind, from Adam and Eve and the fighting that must have gone on when they had to leave the garden, When are we going to eat, Adam? When are we going to drink, Adam? Well, you know, if you wouldn't have bit that fucking apple, we'd be eating and drinking out of the garden. But since you did, I've got to toil over the soil. I've got to work it to make it grow. Otherwise, it grows nothing but thorns. And much like today, marriage is everywhere dissolving. So we haven't figured out how to let 7 billion people just do this for dinner. Breakfast, lunch, a snack. And our fleshly desire to control everything, we've lost control of everything. We no longer have the wisdom that we need. He was trying to return to that wisdom. He was trying to return to the understanding that Solomon had. That all the other stuff is just vapor in the wind. And it's only about loving the one true God. The occasional sounds of civilization beckoned him to try and return. But this was his home now. He knew that if he were to return, it would be like it was the last time. And the overwhelming nature of it all, he would break down, frustration, and weep like some pathetic child. The strain of trying to get through day by day was sometimes just too much. He just needed a break from it all. Just needed some place to heal his mind and his spirit. Simmer down as he watched ignorance reign and the opportunity to solve the future of communism and no history being available because everything was racist. What he had learned since traveling back and inhabiting this body after it had died was difficult for his psyche to take. It was even more difficult for the host body. Struggles and images of past, present, and future mixing together constantly. Was he living in this place or that, this state, that state? What time, what year? He couldn't keep it all together anymore. But here there was none of that. Here there was just peace. It was time to take his medicine, his pills. In this world, he needed to be medicated and high to function. In the dream world, one he longed for, he never saw himself having to do this. He wondered if he would just forget the enjoyment of being alive until he wasn't anymore, or if that's where God would truly heal him. He tries mowing the yard, but between the heat, the exhaustion, he can hear his mechanical valve clicking, clicking faster and faster. He struggles for every breath and every step. But the city demands the yard be mowed. He wonders if he ever got land. Will there be any mowing? If he ever got to escape into the wild, wouldn't he just wear the paths like the deer and the squirrels and every other creature that lives in the forest? Or would he bring out a mower and mow stuff down still? This world was just too much sometimes. More bills came in, lawnmower breaks, constantly demanding that you go and you spend and you go and you spend and you go fight with somebody to fix it or spend more to buy a new one and then just throw the old away. Don't ever rebuild, don't ever fix, don't ever maintain new and more. He just was having a hard time taking it. He just wanted to disappear into the woods. He knew many people felt that way. It was a primal calling, harkened back to the ancestors that he came from. Get away from this madness. Would he ever escape suburbia and the requirements that it demanded of him to be able to just be demanded to survive? He came looking for respite, but like everything these days, even the public places were closed. They told you to stay home and to stay healthy as they closed off everything that allowed you to get out and get healthy. Don't go swim in the lake. Don't go be in the trees. The public forest that's paid for by your tax dollars is closed. The government says so. Does he stay in town? Does he yell in rage? Does he start a revolution? If only he had his own place of respite, his own place that he could just disappear, that would never be closed off to him. Somewhere that he could go and find a peace. He mows the backyard against his desires, against what he wanted. This was his sanctuary. To him it was a well manicured and cared for and loved space. To the others in his life, it was just an overgrown mess. And it was the problem. It was why the rat that had been there since they bought the place was there now. It was why there was a flea on the dog. So like his other dreams, and despite a beautiful day of talking about the future, he destroys his present and his past and all the enjoyment and pleasure he got in order to please others, in order to satisfy some idea of what society was. Would he ever escape this madness? He nearly mows over a wild blackberry. He's already destroyed many pine nuts or ground nuts. Trees that he's watched since they sprouted, and he can't take anymore. He can't destroy the life that God is giving him around him. He can't stand that society won't let a tree even grow. And if you look around at all his parks, you will see a fungus on every tree. Diseases killing all the big old trees, and nothing allowed to grow to replace it. What will we do when all the trees fall down in the parks and the pretty places and there's nowhere to go because we've poisoned them all too much, and we have no idea how to patiently let a tree grow and the grass in our own backyard? How can we dare to say we know how to best raise children or educate human beings? We have no idea how to even let a tree grow. Our society is corrupt to its core. No one even knows how to love one another, how to communicate. The society is so divided that even every house is in conflict. If something doesn't change, he may break. He needs to find his place of peace. He needs a place to escape. It was late. The moon outside was bright. The dark house was quiet and lonely. Yeah, his family, they were in the other room. They couldn't always understand. They tried to listen, tried to hear him. They just kept blaming him, telling him how wrong he was. Everything he said wasn't right. She didn't say that. He said something else. The crazy cycle, round and round they went. He thought he'd solved that problem. Here it was again. He wanted to sleep, but his mind raced. How would he ever escape all this madness? He wanted to play, to work, to do the things he dreamed. The computer was too old and slow like him. It didn't work very good. The phone, the battery was dead. He couldn't record, he couldn't do anything. He looked around. If he played piano, it would wake everybody. There was nothing inside to do. It was dark out there. Even though he knew it was just suburbia, sometimes the thought of going into the wild terrified him. But he had seen the news that day. Today in history, 160 people around the country had died this weekend. To say that there wasn't a revolution, there was not a fight, there was not a war already on, was to be foolish. How would he survive if he had never escaped and wasn't prepared? He did little things, tried to sit in the yard and be outside. Surely he could be outside in his own yard and feel safe. But even that could be a scary place sometimes. The mosquitoes and the bugs drove him back at home quickly. He felt weak and pathetic. He looked around at all the things that could be done, and none of them were available. None of the tools he wanted. He thought about a hammock and how to solve the typical problem with hammocks, and he knew he had some straps somewhere. Like always, something had been moved. Things changed. Trees don't suddenly move. Rocks don't suddenly move. Plants don't suddenly move unless something or someone has disturbed them. In a house, things move all the time. He tries not to say words like, "That drives me crazy." Sometimes it drives him crazy. Sometimes he'll just even hide in the garage, in the dark, where it's quiet, and he can work and think, use his brain for the only thing that it's good for, solving problems. Every day as he ages, his body feels less and less capable of doing anything. But the problems of the world today he couldn't solve. They were beyond his reach. He couldn't garner enough influence without sacrificing himself to the social media giants who were a part of destroying the thing that he loved. How could he share a message? How could he help people in it when he didn't even know how to help himself? He sat in his safe spaces, wherever they were, a place of quiet, a place of solitude, a place where he could try to get away from all the frustrations, but ultimately when you leave that room or that safe space, all those things are still there. And now there was a nation of cowards trying to burn down his heritage so that they could have a place that's safe from words. And the people who founded had to be safe on a journey that would be the equivalent of traveling to Mars today. He tried to turn frustrations into work, into outlets of creativity, into a book, into a story, into a tale of how to turn the chaos and the challenges and the struggles of your life into something, to turn your tragedy into a triumph, to get a plan, to get your purpose, develop your leadership, take some action, grow some nuts. Or network. One of the two. But as he tried to work, as he built his future, all he was in was the dark. What he truly wanted, more than anything in life, was to be together in the light, to bring the Lord back to people, to bring people back to the Lord's creation, to help solve the problem. He could see the solution. He read his word. He struggled with the challenges. He was a failed body. He didn't have to be a failed mind. But that is all his legacy was going to be, was a string of failures. He couldn't finish the books. He couldn't truly be confident enough to hold people accountable and to make sales and to reach out and contact people and to do the work that he needed to do when it seemed that at every turn, from the technology that at first not only saved him and kept him alive, but gave him an option, gave him a vision for his future, gave him a reason to live for 20 more years, began to turn on him, began to turn him into somebody he didn't want to be. And in his pursuit of that, still had, in the end, what he felt was nothing to show for it all. And much like the yard today, he had destroyed, lost, and hacked away at the things of his life that had been once beautiful to him. So in the darkness, in the despair, he thought and he planned and he dreamed and he wondered about his place that would bring peace. Now he'd explored the ending it all route many times in his head. Hang yourself, shoot yourself, poison yourself. He much preferred battling the wits of nature and dying as a man alone in the wild. He was, after all, a member of the Supertramp clan, an ecological entity destined to go out into new worlds and into the wild places and adapt and change and become a dominant force. He wanted to go into the wild and adapt and change who he was and how he lived and turn that into a dominant force for coaching and training and healing families in trauma. But he first had to figure out how to heal his own. And he didn't know how to do that until he could heal himself. And unlike many who haven't been able to win the battle against suicide, he had thus far, every day of his life, conquered that demon with strength. Nervous at ever giving himself credit for anything, remembering what happened to Moses. Would prayer in a garage be enough? Would his faith and his trust in the vision that the Lord he believed had given him be enough to get him where he believed he should be, living the life he believed he should live? He had tried to follow that light, that thin sliver of light, that little bit of brightness in the dark, dark universe for what felt like eons, alone and afraid, waiting on something or someone to help pick him up. And there was only one light to turn to in all of that darkness. There was no human contact. It was the depths of universal despair. Until one day,